Hello students, welcome to aimsindia online classes. This is a chemistry session. Here we are discussing about symbols and the formulae of elements and compounds. We have started learning about symbols of the elements. In this session, we are going to say about ions and the radicals. What are ions? What are radicals? How these are formed? We are going to see in this session. Okay, first let us go through the ions. When an atom loses or gains electrons, it gets a charge. Okay, why the atoms they gain or lose electrons? We have learned in the earlier sessions that the atoms which are having 8 electrons in their outermost shell are being more stable. The elements which are not having 8 electrons in their outermost shell, they are being unstable. Out of 118 elements discovered so far, isn't it? Scientists they have discovered around 118 elements till now. Out of these 118 elements, only few elements are having 8 electrons in their outermost shell. So those elements are observed with more stability, more comfortability. They do not participate in the chemical reactions. But like that, very few elements are there. But the remaining elements are not having 8 electrons in their outermost shells. So they are being unstable. If unstable means they'll be always ready to become stable either by gaining or by losing electrons. By anyhow they should acquire 8 electrons in their outermost shell. In this acquiring 8 electrons in their outermost shell, some elements they lose electrons and some they gain electrons. By these two, either by losing of electrons or by gaining of electrons, atoms they acquire certain charge. On losing electrons, the positive charge becomes more than the negative charge in an atom. Thus, the atom acquires positive charge. Why? Because we know in an atom, in the neutral atom, the number of electrons and protons will be equal. For example, if we take hydrogen, we know hydrogen has one electron, one proton. What you have studied here, the charge of electron and proton both are equal in quantity, but opposite charges. We know electron has negative charge, proton has positive charge. Both are having same quantity. What is that? 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulombs. If it is electron, its value is minus 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulombs. If it is proton, same quantity but with a positive charge, that is plus 1.602 into 10 to the power of minus 19 coulombs. In this way, protons and electrons are having same charge with opposite charges. And every neutral atom has same number of electrons and protons. That's why it will be neutral. Atoms are said to be neutral because of the presence of same number of electrons and protons. But we are telling here atoms will try to attain stability. In this attaining stability, some atoms they lose one or more electrons. What happens by the loss of electrons? The number of electrons becomes less than the number of protons. Means positive charges are more than the negative charges. That's why those atoms acquire positive charge. Simply to say, atoms by losing electrons acquire positive charge. How many electrons are lost by the atom? Those many units of positive charge is acquired by those atoms. Okay. In the other way, on gaining electrons, the negative charge becomes more than the positive charge. Thus, the atoms acquire negative charge. So, some atoms they will try to attain octet configuration by gaining electrons. Some they lose electrons, and some other elements they will gain electrons so that they will attain octet configuration. So here by gaining of electrons, what's happening? The number of electrons becomes more. Means negative charges number will become more than the positive charges. And thus those atoms will acquire negative charge. How many electrons are gained by the atom? those many units of negative charges are acquired by that atom. Okay. Now here, an atom that acquires an electric charge, either positive or negative, is called ion. So atoms, either by losing or gaining of electrons, they are acquiring charges. These charge acquired ions, these charge acquired atoms are called ions. Okay, if they are formed by the gaining of electrons, then they are called negative ions. If they are formed by the loss of electron, then they are called positive ions. Finally, the atoms with charge are called ions. Now we can say types of ions here. We are telling the formation of ion with two types. One by gaining of electrons, other by loss of electrons. So based upon this, we can say there are two types of ions. One of them is positive ions, electropositive ions, which are also called as cations. If an atom loses electrons, the atom gets a positive charge. Such positively charged atom is called an electropositive ion or cation. So we are telling here some elements they lose electrons and form positive ions. These ions which are formed by the loss of electrons are called electropositive ions, which are also called as cations. Generally, metals they lose electrons because it is observed for metals there will be one or two or three electrons in their valence shell. But if there are one or two or three, will they become stable? No. How many electrons to be there for to becoming stable? 8 electrons. Suppose an atom is there with one electron in the outermost shell. Now it is not a stable element. To become stable, it will be having two chances. One it is losing of this one electron so that it will become stable element with the octet configuration. Other chance is gaining of 7 more electrons so that it will get 8 electrons the outermost shell. Which will be easy in these two? Gaining of 7 electrons or losing of simple 1 electron? Losing of 1 electron. So that element will be ready to lose that 1 electron always so that it becomes positive ion. In that way, the metal atoms which are having less number of electrons in their valence shells, they will be always ready to lose those electrons and hence form positive ions. So that's why we can say metals form positive ions or metals form cations. Okay, with the loss of electrons, metals they form positive ions. Those positive ions formed are called electropositive ions or cations. Okay, so we can say simply here metals form cations. Let us see example here H plus, Be plus 2, aluminium plus 3, lead Pb plus 4, Sb plus 5. Why these are having different charges? Because they lose different number of electrons. If we see hydrogen, it can lose one electron and forms one unit positive charge. If we see beryllium, it can lose two electrons and it can form Be plus 2 ion. And if we see aluminium, aluminium can lose 3 electrons and hence it can form Al plus 3 ion. In this way generally, of course except hydrogen, remaining all are metals here. Metals, they lose electrons and form positive ions. These positive ions formed are called electropositive ions or cations. In these, there are different kinds of positive ions again. So different charges are there. So we can segregate them into different types. First, let us say about monovalent electropositive ions. Mono. Mono means one or single. Monovalent electropositive ions means the metallic ions which are formed by the donation of only one electron from its outermost orbit are called monovalent electropositive ions. So some metal atoms they will be having only one electron in their valence shell. So those will be always ready to lose that one electron and hence they can acquire nearest noble gas configuration. And thus the ions formed by these elements are called monovalent electropositive ions. Okay, the metallic ions which are formed by the donation of one electron from their valence shell are called monovalent electropositive ions. Okay, for example, if you see Na plus, if you see sodium, what is the atomic number of sodium? We know as it is 11. If you write configuration for this sodium, means that the electron distribution will be like this: 2 comma 8 comma 1. In the outermost shell for sodium there will be only one electron. Now is this sodium stable? No, because there should be 8 electrons for the stability, just like the noble gases. But here sodium is having only one electron, and hence it is an unstable element. It will be always ready to become stable by losing single electron in the outermost shell. Okay, this will be very ready to lose this electron always. So when it gets a chance, immediately it will lose that electron and becomes stable with the configuration 2 comma 8. So after loss of this electron C configuration 2 comma 8, how many electrons are there in the last shell now? 8 electrons. So it becomes stable with this octet configuration of neon. So by the loss of an electron, sodium becomes now Na plus. This is called monovalent electropositive ion because it is formed by the loss of only one electron. So in the same way, this all we can say as monovalent electropositive ions: H plus, rubidium plus, K plus, ammonium ion. It is called ammonium ion. NH4 plus. These all are formed by the loss of one electron. They are called monovalent electropositive ions. Okay. Next, divalent electropositive ions. The metallic ions which are formed by the loss or donation of two electrons from its outermost or from their outermost orbits are called divalent electropositive ions. Means the ions formed by the loss of two electrons from their outermost shell are called bivalent or divalent electropositive ions. Let us see example here: Ca plus 2, Mg plus 2, Be plus 2. These all are the ions of metals which are formed by the loss of two electrons from each. By the loss of two electrons, they become stable. Let us see one example from these. If we see magnesium, what is the atomic number of magnesium? We know as it is 12. If you see the electronic configuration for this magnesium with atomic number 12, it will be 2 comma 8 comma 2. How many electrons are there in the last shell? 2 electrons. Is it a stable element? No, because there are only 2 electrons in the outermost shell. So this magnesium will be always ready to lose these 2 electrons so that it attains the electron configuration 2 comma 8. So when it gets a chance, immediately it loses those 2 electrons and forms Mg plus 2 ion because it is losing 2 electrons. Okay, negative charge becomes 2 units less because of the loss of 2 electrons, and 2 units positive charge will be more. That's why it forms a 2 units positive charged ion, that is called divalent electropositive ion. Okay, in a similar way, these are also 2 units positive charged ions, bivalent electropositive ions. Got it? Next, in the similar way, trivalent electropositive ions. That means the metallic ions which are formed by the donation of 3 electrons from their outermost shells are called as trivalent electropositive ions. For example, Al plus 3, that means aluminium ion. Fe plus 3, cobalt ion, CO3 plus, strontium ion. These are the ions formed by the loss of 3 electrons from their outermost shells. Thus, they are acquiring 3 units of positive charge, and hence they are called trivalent electropositive ions. Okay. Next, in the similar way, tetravalent electropositive ions. Tetra. Here, tri represents 3. In the similar way here, tetra represents 4. Means the metallic ions which are formed by the donation of 4 electrons from their outermost shells or orbits are called as tetravalent electropositive ions. These are generally rare. If we see examples for this, Pb plus 4, tin, Sn plus 4, etc. These are formed by the loss of 4 electrons and hence they are called tetravalent electropositive ions. Okay. Generally, these electropositive ions are formed by the metallic elements because metals will be having less number of electrons in their outermost shells. So to become stable, they can lose those electrons and hence form electropositive ions. Okay. Next, another kind of ions. They are electronegative ions, which are also called as anions. If an atom gains electrons, then the atom gets negative charge because uh, by gaining of electrons, number of negative charges increases than the positive charges, and thus that atom acquires negative charge. Such a negatively charged atom is called an electronegative atom, an electronegative ion or anion. For example, Cl minus, O minus 2, N minus 3, C minus 4, etc. These all are formed by the gain of one or more electrons. So by the gain of electrons, they acquire negative charge. These negatively charged ions are called anions or electronegative ions. Okay. In this also there are different kinds of electronegative ions based upon the number of electrons gained. Out of them, the first one is monovalent electronegative ions. What is meant by monovalency? The charge formed by the gaining or loss of one. And here it is mentioned electronegativity means the charge formed by the gaining of one electron. The negative charge formed by the gaining of one electron. So the definition for this, an ion or radical which is formed by the acceptance of only one electron is called monovalent electronegative ion. The ion formed by the acceptance of only one electron is called monovalent electronegative ion. For example, Cl minus, F minus, OH minus, etc. These all are carrying one unit negative charge and hence they are called monovalent electronegative ions. If we see example chlorine, what is the atomic number of chlorine? We know it is 17. If we write its configuration, we observe it as 2, 8, 7. Isn't it? Though, so in the outermost shell, it has 7 electrons. Is it a stable element? No. To become stable, how many electrons should be actually? There should be 8 electrons, but it has only 7 electrons. Now, it is an unstable element. It will try to become stable by acquiring 8 electrons in the outermost shell. It also has two chances now. One it is gaining of one more electron so that it becomes octet here. The other chance is losing of these 7 electrons and hence it becomes stable with this 2, 8 configuration. Which will be easy among these two, between these two? Gaining of only one electron or loss of 7 electrons? Which will be easy? Yes, gaining of only one electron. So when it gets a chance, chlorine will gain that electron and becomes stable with the configuration 2, 8, 8. So by the gain of this new electron, it will get one unit negative charge. And thus the ion formed by this is called monovalent electronegative ion. In the same way we can say fluorine also. Fluorine also will get one electron to become stable. Isn't it? OH minus ion. It is called hydroxide ion. It is also having one unit negative charge. So it is also one of the monovalent electronegative ions. Next, divalent electronegative ions. Di or bivalent, both are similar, which represents two. An ion or radical which is formed by the acceptance of two electrons, are called bivalent electronegative ions. For example, O minus 2, S minus 2, SO4 minus 2. These all are the ions formed by the gain of 2 electrons each. For example, if we see oxygen, our atomic number of oxygen is 8. If you see configuration for this, 2, 6, isn't it? So now, how many electrons are there in the outermost shell? 6 electrons. Is it a stable element now? No. To become stable, there should be 8 electrons. So, whenever it get a chance, immediately it will gain 2 electrons from outside and becomes stable as the nearest noble gas neon with the configuration 2, 8. So, this is acquiring the stability by gaining 2 electrons. So as these 2 electrons are having 2 units negative charge, this oxygen will acquire 2 units negative charge. Thus the ion formed by the oxygen by gaining of 2 electrons is called divalent electronegative ion or bivalent electronegative ion, which are also called anions. Okay, in the similar way, sulfur ion, sulfide ion it is called S minus 2, sulfate ion, these together one ion. Okay, these are called bivalent electronegative ions. Next, trivalent. Trivalent electronegative ions. We know tri represents 3. Trivalent electronegative ions means the ions which are formed by the acceptance or gain of 3 electrons are called trivalent electronegative ions. For example, N minus 3, B minus 3, PO4 minus 3, which is called phosphate ion. This is boron ion. This is nitrogen ion, which is called nitride, boride, phosphate. These all are formed by the acquiring, means accepting 3 electrons from the outside. By the acceptance of 3 electrons, they are acquiring 3 units negative charge. Thus, these are called trivalent electronegative ions. Okay. So these are the ions which are formed by the gain of electrons and hence these are called electronegative ions or anions. Now let us see one more kind of ions which are called radicals. A radical is a group of atoms that carries a charge and behave as one unit in the chemical reactions. Just now I have seen about different kinds of ions formed by the atoms, single atoms. So these ions are also formed by the certain group of atoms also often in the chemical reactions. These group of atoms which are carrying either positive or negative charge are called as radicals. These radicals are also just like the ions in the chemical reactions. They also behave as single unit in the chemical reactions. For example, the symbol of sulfate ion is SO4 minus 2 ion. Here, sulfate ion is formed by the group of atoms. See, one sulfur atom and 4 oxygen atoms all together they are carrying this charge SO, this minus 2 charge. So these all atoms together considered as now one radical. SO4 minus 2 is an ion which is also called as a radical. So sulfate ion is said to be now a radical. The group of atoms which are carrying charge are called as radicals. So these radicals are also called as ions. No wrong. Okay. Sulfate ion is present in sulfuric acid. We know the sulfuric acid formula is H2SO4. Sulfuric acid reacts with sodium chloride as follows. See here, where is sulfuric acid formula? This is H2SO4 is the formula of sulfuric acid. This sulfate ion is present in the sulfuric acid. Now, when it reacts with the sodium chloride, it forms a sodium sulfate. Okay, the sulfate radical will come and combine with sodium. Of course, this hydrogen combines with chlorine and forms water. Now, this sulfate ion reacts with sodium. Sulfate radical moves as one unit and replaces chlorine from sodium chloride and combines with sodium to form sodium sulfate. Here the point to remember is the sulfate part SO4 minus 2 part in H2SO4 moves as one unit and combines with sodium. So this total sulfate is considered as one unit and it reacts as one unit with the sodium. That's why this sodium or the sulfate is called as either an ion or radical. This group of atoms which are carrying ion charge are called radicals specially. Okay, sulfate is a radical. Radicals are also commonly called ions, no wrong. And some other examples for the radicals, if you say ammonium ion, ammonium radical, NH4 plus positive radical, which is carrying one unit positive charge. These all together will participate in the chemical reaction as one unit. Okay, like this, the group of atoms which are carrying charge are called as radicals. Okay, that's about ions and radicals. Thank you for watching our video. Please subscribe our YouTube channel Aims Today for latest updates on recorded videos. Even you can visit our website aimstoday.in for watching our completed and recorded videos. Even you can get latest updates by subscribing our YouTube channel.